Clear Plate project.
The gold standard is about innovation in carbon markets, and robust innovation at that. We're very keen to influence the way that compliance markets around the world behave. And so innovations like climate smart agriculture are a way for us to demonstrate how compliance regimes could incorporate agricultural practices and have confidence in doing so. One of the great things about the Carbon Solutions Global project is that it's using a UNFCCC methodology and applying that in a new way. So we're using the practices developed under JI and applying them in the voluntary carbon market, making some changes, but those changes can be fed back into the way that compliance markets are designed, and that's a very exciting part of this project. Carbon is about people. Fundamentally, projects happen in communities. It doesn't matter whether it's a wind farm, cook stove project, or an agricultural project. But often, to people at home, the consumers of the corporates who offset their emissions, carbon's seen as very abstract. By linking people's daily activity of eating with the project activity on the ground, we think that can be very powerful in enhancing people's understanding of how carbon markets enhance people's lives at the same time as enhancing the planet's ability to deal with climate change and address climate change. We had a tremendous response to our land use expansion, and particularly within the climate smart agriculture area. And we were delighted when Carbon Solutions Global approached us to look at this particular project in Hungary for a number of reasons. Firstly, we were keen to look at innovative new projects that could really enhance the way that carbon markets have historically worked and to really drive a new frontier in agricultural-based carbon techniques. And in particular, we were keen to work in Eastern Europe because the opportunity to change agricultural techniques and approaches there is significantly greater than elsewhere in the world. So we believe that it can blaze a trail for carbon in agriculture in general and changes to more sustainable land use in Eastern Europe more broadly. The gold standard was set up by the NGO community to drive and define best practice in carbon markets and climate finance more broadly. We've done that with great success over the last 10 years, with a particular focus on energy projects and energy access in particular, driving sustainable development. The latest frontier is going to be climate smart agriculture as part of our wider land use expansion. This is an area that's barely been touched by carbon markets and is hugely innovative, yet has a potential to have a profound impact on communities, smallholder farmers in particular, to increase their incomes, to reduce exposure to harmful chemicals, and to make long-term changes that will create sustainable growth for rural communities. Climate smart agriculture is at the frontier of the development of carbon markets, and therefore it's right and necessary that the gold standard drives that new frontier, because it has the trust of the international NGO community and policymakers from governments around the world. In the same way that we've seen energy access technologies really accelerate and the move towards a clean energy future being driven by carbon markets and by a holistic approach advocated by the gold standard and its supporters, we believe the same approach can be brought to agriculture through a gold standard approach to climate smart agriculture and improved land management in general. We think that the use of new techniques can be accelerated quite rapidly through the application of carbon finance, and we're delighted to be working with Carbon Solutions Global to really begin that process. It's well recognised that the world is heading towards a food shortage, and yet very simple changes in many cases can make a vast difference to the way that food is produced. Often we look at agricultural changes as needing to be about intensification of farming, about extra chemicals, about changes to the way crops are designed even. And yet in this project, what we see is that by actual changes towards a less intensive in terms of chemical fertilizer usage approach, a more traditional approach to managing the land in terms of caring about how that yield is achieved by using low tillage techniques, for example, we're going to see an increased yield with a less intensive approach and a less artificial approach in many ways. Those changes are changes that can be carried out and undertaken year in, year out over generations. And so the increased yield and the benefits of those techniques will be seen really relatively quickly, but the reliance on chemical fertilizers will be reduced. And so from an NGO perspective and from a civil society perspective, this is a win-win because you're seeing increased benefits to the communities through increased productivity, and you're seeing at the same time as that lower reliance on chemical fertilizers. The project with Carbon Solutions Global is a very interesting approach because it combines a number of agricultural changes. First and foremost, looking at the way that tillage takes place. So rather than deep ploughing and leaving soil open for the winter, the ploughing technique is changed and the soil is closed over to prevent soil carbon leaking into the atmosphere. In addition, we have a change to the fertilisers that are being used. So moving away from intense chemical fertilisers to algal-based fertilisers. And that has a huge benefit, not only in terms of emissions, but also a wider sustainable development benefit in terms of environmental pollution through chemical fertilisers, the exposure of the farming community to those fertilisers, and also the runoff into local water systems. Carbon finance is a vital component of the way that these changes to more sustainable agricultural practice can be achieved. Often we find that the initial outlay and the changes that are required do carry a higher cost, as they would if you were using a greater amount of fertiliser to increase the yield by the same amount. However, these are more sustainable over the long term. What we require therefore is upfront financing through the sale of carbon credits associated with these changes, and the trust that the gold standard brings to that process through the review of the project, involvement with the design of the project, and ongoing verification that the changes have actually taken place and the benefits are actually being seen is vital. And that means that the buyers of carbon credits from projects such as this can have confidence that the changes are taking place and that the real benefits are being achieved that are being marketed to them. And that trust is a vital way that carbon markets generally can be expanded around the world. And it's an important part of the gold standard's philosophy that we want to see greater use of market mechanisms. We want to see carbon markets adopted more widely, and what will be required to achieve that is trust from civil society, trust from the various different actors involved, in order to ensure that they see that these are an effective instrument and can be applied and can be invested into. For corporates, carbon crediting is a vital part of a carbon management strategy, because however much focus you have internally on reducing emissions, there will always be an outstanding balance of emissions, and it's important to address those through the offsetting mechanism. Projects like this allow corporates to use that and benefit from the wider sustainable development benefits that the project delivers, and to associate themselves very closely with changes that affect people very profoundly. So buyers of credits from this type of project can really see the effect that their investment has on communities. They can know that although the credit itself has environmental integrity, it achieves so much more. And that marketing opportunity to them to associate themselves with changes in a particular country, among a particular community, is a vital part of how they can communicate the benefits to their own clients. Carbon markets are the ultimate in results-based finance. Over the last 10 years, it's really been demonstrated that through a robust methodological approach, you can drive finance into a particular activity and have confidence that that income is being maximised in the development of a project activity. So rather than financing an input, you're financing an outcome. And carbon is the best possible way for a corporate to achieve confidence in the way that it uses its CSR funding. Not only because it has verified outcomes, so you know that what is being delivered is what has been described to you, but also because though that ton of carbon is achieving a range of other benefits. Under the gold standard approach, we're actually measuring those benefits, identifying what those wider sustainable outcomes are, and recording those. It's just as important to the delivery of a gold standard credit that those sustainable development outcomes are achieved as the emission reduction itself. The gold standard is all about driving best practice and innovation in carbon markets, defining what can be achieved and showing that it can be done in a robust way. We like to break new ground, and in this case with the Carbon Solutions Global project, we're collaborating to do something really quite unique in the market. And we think that's quite an exciting opportunity for buyers of carbon offsets who are familiar with the approach and who really want to associate themselves with innovation within these types of market. And to be able to communicate something new about a project. Everyone understands trees, everyone understands wind farms, and agriculture is a new frontier in carbon markets. The gold standard is the right organisation to drive trust in how agricultural carbon can be used, And it has a whole new set of benefits associated with smallholder farmers and very poor communities in Eastern Europe in this particular case. So we think that will be deeply attractive to buyers.
Adrian Rimmer, CEO of the Gold Standard Foundation.